All right, guys, we'll go ahead and get cooking. Welcome aboard. We are talking about modernizing legal communication through conversational plain language AI. That's one of the longest titles we ever had.
We could just call it chatbot and be done. Not quite.
That's right, we could. All right, we want to welcome all the agencies. We love doing these interagency briefings for you guys to be able to connect you and help you guys communicate on things as well. We like to share things back and forth. Real quick disclaimer, this session does include a GSA vendor, that would be DivIHN, and a product demonstration that you guys created, right, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
All right, fantastic. But it's not affiliated, we're not affiliated or endorsed by any federal agency. It's provided to you, the audience, government audience, for informational purposes only. Participation is not an indication or endorsement to purchase from any vendor, including DivIHN. The session is being recorded so that we can distribute that to you as we get throughout this. The objective of the session is to explore how modern, cost-effective AI can make public information more transparent. A lot of that, there's a lot of requests for that, right, Jeff?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Accessible, actionable than ever before. I love it. And so you guys can take a look at the agenda over there in the handouts, where we'll get to the handouts in just a moment. I promise we will get those to you. And first thing we're going to do is ask you why in the world you guys decided to show up. Maybe you're responsible for legal communications. Maybe you have a problem that you're trying to solve with AI, or maybe you're just trying to get your head around AI and what it can do for you. Maybe you want to be part of the dialogue, or your boss made you come. There's going to be a Weisenheimer in there somewhere, Matt. I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah. Always.
Always a Weisenheimer. The boss made you come. And if you've ever been to a GovBrief session before, and if you have any comments, let us know. We will make sure we get your information in and answer all your questions, or find somebody who can. Right, Jeff?
Yes, indeed.
That's what we do. That's what we do. Matt Sweet, located in Maryland. Tell us about you. How did you get started with DivIHN, and what does DivIHN do?
Sure. So I started DivIHN about 3.5 years ago. It was a really interesting story. DivIHN's been around for 20 years, but they were all just strictly commercial. Started off doing a lot of IT staffing, kind of moved into solutioning. They went to one big DISA event and said, hey, we should be able to help the government. Let's do that. So I was brought on board to start that journey with the team here. I'm glad I did. So DivIHN, basically, to put it out there, first of all, I want to thank everyone for joining today. I know you're busy, and I'm excited about this. It's a product. It's not just someone talking. We get to show you something. So that's really neat. It's going into our AI journey as you guys are, continuing your own. But DivIHN, as I said earlier, we've been around for about 23 years. We're a holistic technology solutions provider that operates on the principle of in service with excellence and grace. So we try to be great at what we do like anybody else, but we also know that, we may fall short. Everyone might fall short, but we pick each other up in partnership. We're not just a technology firm. We're an established federal partner with rigorous infrastructure. So we've got great credentials. We have ISO certifications, 9001, 20000, 27001, as well as a top secret facility clearance and a DOEQ clearance. We support 4 Department of Energy labs and the Air Force Reserve Command. So we're all about compliance, RMF, NIST, and CMC. Why that's important to this is, unlike a lot of regular AI companies, we're all about being safe in our AI, and we're doing everything we can with the help of Jeff, who is the managing person for AI here, to introduce multiple IPs in the AI sphere. Mostly RAG related at this time. So that's everything for me right now. If you have any questions, please let us know anytime. Okay. Thank you.
Love it. Appreciate it. And we
actually, maybe I should give I'm sorry, Dave, to jump in there, but maybe a quick update on me, right? So
yeah, do that.
Why I'm here and why I'm talking. So I've been with DivIHN for 5.5 years now. I'm currently the principal of what we call our cloud solutions practice, which includes a lot of Microsoft technologies and data and AI. Been a solution developer and tech guy my whole career, and consulting that whole time, and very excited to kind of show and tell some of the work we've been doing at DivIHN. So
love it. Appreciate you being here. Absolutely. Love it. So we did ask what would make the best briefing ever. You can pop it in the chat if you didn't answer this already, but we have a lot of folks that responded on the way in. We have several folks in the VA. Thank you for doing what you do. Carol says, providing real-time examples. We got a lot of folks asking for that. Della said, it assisted me with communicating federal regulation to contractors more easily. That's exactly what we're talking about today, right, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. I love it. Jonathan with the Department of Ed offered real-life scenarios. You're going to do that. You're doing real-time, real life, right, Jeff?
Yep. We'll show and tell our live chatbot.
Love it. And Bradley says, keep it to the point. Nichelle, policy could be written in plain language. That the AI can help you do that, right?
Absolutely.
Easier to digest and share to stakeholders. Love that. Saritha, again, examples. James with plain language prompts. Samantha, this will be the best briefing if she learns anything new. So make sure you give her something new. Jennifer from HUD, it included a discussion about back-end support required to maintain this technology. Are you going to dive too much into that?
No, we'll touch a little bit on, how we built it and how it works behind the scenes, but we're going to keep it pretty non-technical for most of the folks here. Of course, can always have an extra separate conversation if you'd like to get more detail on the technology and everything else, and how we support it. But in general, we're going to touch on that, but not get real deep.
I love it. And Dorothy's my favorite person ever. They're already the best thing ever coming here. How do you not love Dorothy? I had to put that in there. Thank you, Dorothy. Jessica from NASUP says it provided valuable information that's applicable in the workplace. We certainly hope so. Right, Jeff?
Absolutely.
If you have anything else that you want us to... I'm sorry, go ahead. We have anything else, pop that into the chat for us. And if you want us to address anything, Carol says verification of AI generated information. A lot of people saying, hey, how do we verify and validate that this information is real as opposed to not real? Right?
Hallucinations.
Hallucinations, as they say.
Yep.
Can you use it in federal acquisitions? Can you use AI in federal acquisitions? How about that? I think we can. I know it's being used, right? Yeah. Making sure the language is actionable like that. How to use the chatbot effectively, because it's not just like Google, right? You can do more than just Google, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
Prompt engineering is a whole thing. We'll talk about that a little bit, but not get too deep there either.
And we have Yolanda from CSOSA. AI uses for legal communication. Exactly what we're talking about today, right, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. Right on.
And then Albert wants to know about monetary assessment, which means how much does it cost? All right, I love it, Albert. Juliana, where's the training data come from? So that's one thing, and how data is retained. So that is dependent on systems, right?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. That's very key to what we're talking about here.
Sweet. And Ken from Department of State Strategy for engaging multiple external stakeholders on messaging. I don't know how much we'll get into that one, but
kind of indirectly, right? I think how the tools could help with that, not specifically strategies, I don't think, but
I love it.
Yeah.
So for everybody, if you haven't been here before, we love the interaction. We don't have a problem with popping you open. You have questions, comments, you have anything that you want, raise your hand, put it in the Q&A, put it in the chat. We'll do our best to be able to pay attention to what you have and what you do. First, the next thing here is our session docs. You can get to those with that link. And if you could do me a favor and click that link and make sure it looks like something like this so you can get to it. And if you can't, please let me know and I'll make sure we get you that in some other way. All right, I'm going to end this poll real quick and we'll share the results. So several folks have a problem. One person is responsible for legal communication and 56% trying to get their head around this thing. Because it's not easy to get your head around AI, especially as you get older. I can attest to that personally. So with that, appreciate you guys joining us, and I will get to the viewing of the details. Let's see what kind of specifics we have here. All right. Respect and appreciate AI more and more, trying to apply the tools. Love that. The product made available to me by working in the capacity. I don't know what that is. LPMHC sounds like a hospital orientation.
Exactly. It is a hospital setting. Yep. Hospital setting. And that stands for a licensed professional mental health counselor. So we love the AI because it helps in order to organize some strategies for putting out some trainings and developing some PowerPoints and whatnot. very beneficial, especially if you kind of have even a beginner's idea of how to use it. So learning more is the reason that I'm on here, you guys. And I always love these trainings.
I love it, man. Well, thanks for being here, Brian. It's great. And anything you want to throw in on what you're using it for, we love to hear it, right, guys?
Absolutely.
All right. So that's right into that, Brian, right along that. What are you using? Are you using anything? You may be using ChatGPT or OpenAI, any other tools, Microsoft Copilot, because I think everybody has access to that in the Fed, right?
Right. It looks like at the bottom of our screen we have a tab, and it's an Microsoft 365. Yeah. And when you click on that, baby, it gets up and running. I'm not sure, like I kind of newer to it. Had some beginners training on LinkedIn training, and this made available to us is very helpful, even with that beginner's knowledge.
Love it, man. Well, I appreciate that. Jeff, you want to go ahead?
Real quick on that, Dave, if I could jump in, right? So, we're not going to talk specifically about Microsoft 365 Copilot here today, but a couple things, right? There's a free version that comes with Windows and Edge and everything else that gives you some capabilities, kind of like ChatGPT. A licensed version of Microsoft 365 Copilot is pretty cool in that it gives you access to whatever content or information or documents and stuff you've got stored in SharePoint or OneDrive. So that's what we use at DivIHN for our everyday AI, generative AI tools. And I love it. It works great. But it's really about having access to the content within your organization, which is another way to do what we're kind of talking about here today as well.
Beautiful.
You want to take over? Jeff, you want to take over the slides?
Sure. Let's go ahead and start sharing my screen here.
Super.
Get on into it.
Just let us know what you guys are using. We always like to know, and it'll help us kind of guide as we go. Awesome.
All right. So let's go ahead. Here's our introductory slide. Now, one quick thing, some of the cool pictures of robots and AI stuff were all AI generated. So we're kind of using the tools as we're talking about the tools here. So we'll be exploring AI technology in general from a government perspective, and specifically showcasing what we call a virtual legislative assistant, which we've named PublicLexAI, right? So public laws, lex is Latin for legal. So it's all about legal chatbot, basically, that helps citizens and policy professionals and really anybody potentially access Illinois state laws conversationally. Right? We'll talk more about that in a sec. But the intent here is to demonstrate how generative AI can make government information, such as laws, as an example, transparent, accessible, and user-friendly. Right? That's the main thing. So, quick look at the agenda. We talked about this real briefly, but we'll do a quick intro, give you a little bit of a why we did it and what we did it for. For some context. We will show you through several scenarios of interacting directly with our PublicLexAI and show you some of the capabilities of that. Share a little bit of detail about how it works and some of the pieces we put together to create this. Not a ton of detail there. Again, don't want to get too technical today, but going to give you some insight of what's going on and why it's more than meets the eye, and ultimately wrap up with some thoughts about takeaways from this and where we might go from here. So I'll warn you ahead of time, a couple of these slides have a lot of words. I'm not going to read them. I'm going to go through them pretty quick or hit the high points. Again, this presentation is meant as a takeaway as well. So some of the things in here, hopefully you can make use of after the show here today. And of course, happy to talk about it more if and when, you'd like to. So, but let's start with a little story, okay? Once upon a time, DivIHN was eager to explore how to build a custom chatbot, right? We're an AI company, we're a solution company. We really wanted to drill down into, what's the deal here? So the key ingredient we were missing was content, right? We needed a lot of content and it needed to be something interesting and potentially useful. So through the work we're doing with governments and especially the state of Illinois, along with, the federal space, we landed on, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if we could make a chatbot out of the state laws of Illinois? So we realized that while, state laws are extensive and, a lot of detailed information about them, They're often challenging to navigate, are written in complex formats that make it hard to use it to make decisions or accurate interpretation of what's going on. All that can be challenging. So to address this, we decided to create a custom AI-powered legislative chatbot that understands natural language questions, normalizes legal citations and legalese, and retrieves, the correct statutes and laws to answer the questions, right, with clear summaries and sources. That's pretty key. The core goal was to make legal information faster, easier, more accessible for everybody, right? With certain key roles we'll talk about as well, but not just legal experts. This also enables us to demonstrate the power of developing a custom chatbot like this. And really the thing is, we're showing one example based on Illinois legislation, but the same concept, the same approach that we used here could apply to just about any type of body of knowledge where you've got, content about something that you want to get insight out of or make more accessible, right? I know of a couple of examples. One where a CIO that's become a consultant is looking to retire, so he wants to kind of try to capture and encapsulate his whole knowledge base. So he fed all of the presentations and things that he's written, and he even wrote a book and fed that all into a similar solution and created a chatbot version of himself and his knowledge and publishings over the life of his career. So,
and that's wild because you see that happening now more and more, and it's kind of weird, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of uncanny how good a job it did of kind of drilling down and so not really giving you any information until they asked enough questions, the CIO would, well, what do you mean? Well, how would you do that? And then
that's wild.
Advice, right?
That's wild.
Good stuff. So, overall, as I kind of alluded to, our vision for this virtual assistant was pretty simple. The goals were, ask, understand, comply, right? We want it to be accurate. We want it to be conversational. We wanted to keep the context, right? All that kind of stuff. So we wanted to remove the complexity for trying to understand legislation and statute and bills for different roles. And the resulting solution that we're going to show allows anyone, right, whether a lawyer, policymaker, or everyday citizen, to ask plain language questions and get concise, accurate summaries with specific source citations. That's key, right? So not just we're going to tell you what we think, or the chatbot tells you what it thinks, but it'll show you where it got the information from, which, in the long term lays the foundation for access to all this stuff, but in a transparent, referenceable, trustworthy way at the end of the day. That's really, really important with AI stuff like this.
And I know Carol was concerned about that, and Sarah, as well as Ronald from Department of State. A lot of folks they just need to make sure that it's real and not hallucinated, as Matt said earlier, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing sometimes where, hey, it thinks it's a good idea, but you have to have it really bolded down to know that you have the right things, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And two key things there is kind of a little preview, right? Is, again, the sourcing. So when it tells you something, it will show you where it got that from, and you can drill down and, in this case, look at the actual raw text of the law or the statute or whatever that it came from, right? So that's one thing, is traceability and drilling down to where it got the answer from so you can verify it yourself. The other thing is, part of what we've done here is, as we built this, is not just, ingest the body of knowledge like legislation of the state of Illinois, but also the process we use to take that and generate responses and answers out of it. There's rules and guardrails and additional processing we do in our pipeline to specifically prevent hallucinations, or when we can't find an answer to say, hey, I don't know, rather than making up something, right? So that's all a key part of, a robust and enterprise-ready, solution like we're talking about here. So what can it do, right? So we've done this. I've kind of alluded to what it is. We'll show and tell in a sec, but, what's it able to do, right? So a lot here, again, and we'll go through all these, but, some of the core capabilities that make it production ready, like I mentioned, are started with trusted, accurate legal question answering that's fully grounded and auditable, right? And kind of legalese. Emphasizes precision retrieval using a hybrid search approach. Again, we'll get too technical there, but combined with legal citation normalization and other interpretation of what's going on to ensure that, we're answering the right questions and, referencing the right information on the back end. The result is a cloud native solution that we're hosting in Microsoft Azure that delivers plain language legal explanations with traceable sources suitable for citizens, analysts, government agencies, and whoever else, right? And it does so, hopefully, we think, consistently, reliably, while, as we mentioned, eliminating or at least minimizing hallucinations and errors. So really key and core to, trustworthiness and accuracy. All right, so a couple of high-level concepts. Again, there's more to it, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of context here. Let's go ahead and show what we're talking about, right? So little bit of things here, right? The user interface is a web application, right? The core of this solution is the custom AI chatbot service in Azure that's exposed via an API, and our web application is going to make calls to that, agent on the back end and return the responses in the web UI, right? So we start with, our web app landing page here. Of course, we've got a login scenario to keep it secure and to, make sure that only, people that we want to have access can have access. Now, to be clear, we haven't published this yet, right? This is still a, demonstration. We haven't shared this publicly. We haven't commercialized this yet. We can, but we're not quite there yet. So, but it does have a lot of these capabilities, and we've tried to engineer this so that it is enterprise ready and has the capabilities needed to be a useful solution for various potential constituencies. So once we're in here, a couple things, right? It's relatively simple. If you've ever used ChatGPT or Copilot or any other, generative AI solution and large language model, they're all pretty similar, right? It's a simple prompt and you ask it questions, right? You have a conversation with it. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump in here and get started with asking some questions. So, you know what? Before I get too far into that, let me talk about this a little bit, right? So what I'm going to do here is, to demonstrate some of these, I'm going to show a couple different examples here, right? To demonstrate the various capabilities we've developed, a number of example scenarios that we've got summarized in the list here, kind of intended for various audiences and things like that. I don't think we have time to go through all 6 of these because they've got multiple prompts each and whatever. You want to keep an eye on the clock, but we'll hit a couple of these that I think will be relevant for everybody here. And again, we can, share more offline or later if needed. So the first one I want to talk about here is an example that's intended to help, simple scenarios and potentially everyday citizens that sees a law or something mentioned in the news and wants to know more, right? Wants to understand what's going on, what's it all about and what can it tell me? So switching back over here, let's go ahead and ask it our first question. I saw a headline about Human Rights Act in Illinois. What does that mean, right? So it's going to go and take that prompt and, try to understand what I'm asking. Is it a legal question or is it just, general small talk or whatever? In this case, it recognizes that it's, talking about Illinois Human Rights Act. So it's going to go retrieve from the database we built of all the laws and information about this. And after a few seconds of processing, come back with an answer, right? Oops, hold on here. So what did it say? So I saw a headline, what is it about? Illinois Human Rights Act is a state law. It gives us the code there, establishes protections against discrimination in various areas, and goes on to list the various areas and things like that, right? So it tells us pretty quickly and hopefully easy to understand that this is about, preventing discrimination, right? What kinds of discrimination, what else, what are the provisions of the act? It kind of summarizes all that at a high level. And here's the thing, right? It shows sources. So if I open up this thing at the bottom here, if I want to know more about what it really is, it's going to give me actual links. And if I open this link in a new tab here, it's going to take me right to the Illinois General Assembly website, the summary of this, and I can drill right down to see the full text of the law here, right? So our chatbot knows where it came from, where it got that data. It can drill us right through to read the text of a law if we want to ourselves, right? So, right on through to here's the real answer. And if you want to go read the law yourself, go for it. But that's how we prove and show, where our response came from. So I think that stuff's pretty cool, right? So let's ask it another question. Oops.
Brian just said short-term memory caught my attention.
Absolutely.
And like he said, it's very important for stakeholders to develop the trust in what you're delivering, no matter what you're delivering, right, Brian?
Exactly. And when we can cite those sources like that, that's a powerful addition to this, because I work with people who are doctors and psychiatrists. And when we do any kind of presentation, you better believe they want the details. They just don't take your word for it.
Yep. And they shouldn't.
Absolutely.
Right?
Exactly. And that's what makes them who they are and why it's productive at the VA.
And the more we see, because it's really getting hard to know what to believe, right, Brian?
More and more so, because there's too many resources out there that are not valid.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And that's a huge part of it. You're absolutely right. All right. So I accidentally closed the wrong window there. Sorry about that. But let's go ahead and, so now asking about what protections does it offer? And I'm hoping it's going to remember from our past chat, what we were talking about here. Right. But the idea here is that, so we've asked it a question, summarize this law. Now I'm saying, can you give me more detail about what specific kinds of protections it offers? Right. And, what it's going to do here in this case, right? So as we just mentioned, it remembered and kept track of which law we're talking about. It's going to describe what the protected areas are, what classes of protections are covered, and other key provisions and things like that, right? So next question, we can ask it here. So specifically, we want to drill down on employment discrimination. So maybe we had want to know more about that specifically. So again, maintaining the context here, drilling down and providing additional context, that hopefully helps us understand exactly, what's going on with employment discrimination as it relates to this particular law. Oops. Yeah. All right. So here it comes back and says discrimination, equal opportunities in the workplace, and summarizes prohibited practices. So what can employers not do in this context? And again, the classes, how to file a charge, what the remedies and exceptions might be, right? And again, a whole ton of additional detail, once more and always with showing the sources that it retrieved this data from, that it used to kind of compile this answer. So, quite a few things going on here, in terms of providing hopefully simple, summaries, but more detailed. And then, of course, the ability to drill down even more and, really get to the details of what you want to understand about this particular law.
What I love a lot about what I've seen in AI is its ability to do the summaries and write a summary that really makes sense for me personally. And you can kind of train it even further as it learns about you. I think, at least that's for me, is it learned about what I like to see and starts to summarize it even better the way that I like to see it. Have you found that to be the case, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm not going to show a ton of here today, but we certainly can do with this and any other kind of solution that's built on large language models is you can give it further instructions in your prompt about the style that you want it to give you back an answer in, or the length or the format, right? So by default, a lot of these, chat style solutions like to give you answers in bullet lists, right? And by default, especially Copilot, really likes bullet lists, right? And
yeah,
if you want it in a narrative format, or if you want it in a short summary, you want it targeted for an executive or targeted for a technical person, you can provide further instructions in your prompts and have it actually, include that or incorporate that into how it constructs the answer. So all those capabilities apply here as well, because this is built on, core large language models and ChatGPT technology. We've just added on to that, as we'll talk more about in a sec, right?
Hey, so, I'm gonna ask a real quick poll, which is the question is, I wish AI could help me do whatever you'd like to put in there. because I think that's important for folks, right? Right, Jeff, is to find out what they want to use it for. And I would not put in there, if I were you, replace my boss. Just saying. You can if you want. We're not not going to let that out.
No, but that's a good point, and I think it's useful to kind of make sure that we're clear here today too. What we're showcasing, what we're talking about here today, is a custom chat bot or a custom virtual assistant, right? Which is built on top of and similar to ChatGPT and Copilot and other generative AI large language models, right? That's just one type of AI solution. There's lots of other kinds of AI, lots of different ways to apply these technologies, right? ChatGPT stuff's getting most of the news, but there's other cool things going on, and there's other opportunities for automation and insight and things like that besides these. So it's useful to kind of understand that there's a whole lot of different types of technology that can provide different sorts of solutions.
You bet. So you go ahead. I'll share that in a minute, and we'll make sure we tap into what everybody needs. Go ahead, Jeff.
Sounds good. Yep. So moving on to our next scenario here, right? This one's about enabling fast, again, authoritative statutory lookups for civic questions or details, again, providing clear summaries, citations, and follow-up answers without needing legal expertise. So let's switch gears here and make sure we've got the right thing going on. And come back, and I started a new chat here, so we're kind of fresh. Start asking it some new questions. In this case, who appoints the state comptroller in Illinois? Maybe you've got specific questions about that, or looking to interact with the office of the comptroller or whatever, and you kind of want to understand the background and context here. So it tells us that the state comptroller is not appointed but elected, right? So, and according to the particular law that controls that, they're the chief fiscal control officer for the state of Illinois, and it's filled through election. But if it has to be replaced, the governor can appoint a successor temporarily till the next election or whatever, right? And again, sources there include the State Comptroller Act, which our follow-up question, can you summarize the Comptroller Act? What else does it say about the role of comptroller in the state of Illinois, right? And one more quick point here, we may have mentioned this already, but I wanted to be, clear. We've taken the laws of the state of Illinois here as an example for, various reasons, because we're working closely with a lot of agencies within the state of Illinois. But this same technology, our same approach here, could apply to other bodies of knowledge or other, jurisdictions and legislation. So if we wanted to do this for the federal government, we could. Obviously, there's a lot of information to ingest to do all that, but we might do that as well. We certainly could. And if we did do that, if we added other state laws, other jurisdictions, and federal as well, we could do even more complex things like compare between states or between state and federal or other cool things like that. So we're just kind of scratching the surface here with what this thing can do, but still a lot of power, hopefully, and you can kind of get a feel for that as we're going through here. So what did it tell us about the Comptroller Act, roles and responsibilities, appointments? And yes, it has an oath. You can drill down to see what it specifically says, all that. Powers, duties, map, responsibilities, all this cool stuff about the Comptroller Act and what it tells us. And so now if we want to understand exactly how the appointment process works, get down to the specifics. Again, this is all, has access to and is based on the raw text of the legislation behind the scenes. So it can drill down and give us, citations of the specific section of the text or whatever, and show us where it is and, again, how to navigate to it. So, once again, 15 ILCS 405, section 4, right? Failure to take an oath, one of the things like that talks about the appointment process, right? So another example there, hopefully, that kind of gives us a sense for, how you can drill down in certain areas or get more details about a specific, scenario there.
And agencies can do this too with populating the data that they want to feed to the public and have it reference either FAR clauses. If there was somebody who was asking about using it in contracting and procurement, you can use any of the other statutes to be able to go back against a library of statutes, just like you're doing, right, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of flexibility and power there as well.
Yep.
All right, so let's try this one on executive briefing scenarios. So in this case, for executives and chiefs and things like that, we want to kind of get a broader level perspective that summarizes across multiple laws and gives us more insight from that perspective. So let's see what happens with this scenario. And which one did I say? 5. All right.
So while you're doing that, I'm gonna take a look at what folks are looking to do. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Summarize acquisition regs that might apply to a particular situation. Very similar to this, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Write research-related data for the care of veterans, so you could certainly build that into your library, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's just about asking the questions, right? Again, all based on Illinois law. If we needed other information, different jurisdictions, federal laws, we'd have to do work to the back end to enable that. But otherwise, yeah, ask it any question you want to, and it'll do its best to try to synthesize an answer that makes sense in that context.
Taking notes and completing notes. So that's kind of like bots that you can put into things like Zoom, right? They can drop things into Zoom or Teams, right?
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
Here's one from Brian. Love what Brian, you're awesome. Develop tools to make a big difference in regards to the VA provision for mental health. Obviously, that's your world. For the resources currently, including suicide prevention program for training staff. Boy, is that an important one, right, Brian?
Yeah, what an awesome opportunity. And that's what some of this that you guys are teaching here today is so valuable, because it cites resources, which is obviously going to be necessary because everything's evidence-based with the product that the VA puts out.
Yep. And I love that mission, by the way. Thanks, Brian. That's a huge one. Thank God for what you're doing for the vets there. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and absolutely. While we're talking about that, I was getting a little bit ahead here on the next couple of prompts for this example. I think one thing to notice here is, depending on how hard the question we're asking is, right, it sometimes takes more time for the back-end agent to do the processing, pull the data, and pull it all together. It's still, 10 seconds, maybe 20 tops, so it's not very long, but while you got an audience of people waiting for the answer, it can take enough time to be noticeable. So anyways, what we got out of this one was, create a 5-sentence briefing on Illinois statutes about data privacy, right? So this lists, the first answer to that question was, giving us examples of the laws that apply here, right? Personal Information Protection Act, Section 45 of 18 ISCS 530, whatever that is. HIPAA obviously matters. Illinois Information Security Act. So it, can, again, across different laws, pull information about, relevant to the topic that you're asking about. Then group those by which agencies they pertain to. So now it turns us around and says, the general attorney, has this one, the Illinois Department of Innovation and Technology, manages or whatever falls under that. So again, kind of summarizes this based on, higher level information about it. And then the last one is, providing citations of each one, exactly where it came from. So which section did each of these things, another way to kind of show the drill down or the drill through to the information behind the scenes. So, several different ways, to hopefully get a sense for what's going on here. The citation thing, the memory across the different, questions, it keeps the context. And obviously that's all critical for being able to give good answers, provide useful information, and keep it easy to use, right? So
when you built this and created the model, can you give like a high level overview of what that looks like?
Sure, Dave.
Hey, I didn't even know you were going there.
Next section of the thing. So
I didn't even know that. See that?
Great prompt, man. So now that we've seen what it can do, right, the next couple of slides are going to give a very brief overview of how it works and what it took to make it, right? So this slide, again, with a lot of words, right, a lot of stuff going on here. I won't drill down too much. It's pretty technical, so let's hit a couple highlights, right? what did we do to build the thing? It's a full life cycle approach here, right? A solution, software development life cycle kind of approach, beginning with defining the strategy of what we're trying to do. What are we trying to accomplish here? What are we bringing to the table, right? High quality data. It's all about that. Without good data, it's useless, right? Pretty much any AI is only as good as the data you provide it and how you use that data, right? So critical to have that. And that's why we landed and settled on, public laws of the state of Illinois, right? While the ILGA website that hosts those laws is proprietary and not public domain, right? The text of the laws themselves are public domain, right? That's government something doctrine. I forget exactly it's mentioned earlier in the thing, but so we wanted a lot of data. We figured that all the laws of the state of Illinois would be a good example to build a custom chatbot out of, and to provide a useful capability for people that have interest in the laws of the state of Illinois or elsewhere.
And what does RAG stand for? Thank you, Nichelle.
Great question. Sorry, and I think I mentioned that later, but it stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. So that's basically a way of taking a body of knowledge, a set of content, encoding and embedding it to make it into a format that the AI engine can use, and then incorporating that into, the process. Next slide talks about that. I'll kind of come back to a little bit more on that in a sec. But, the rest of the process here, entailed pulling all that data, processing it, embedding it, indexing, and a couple other technical words in AI space, all the way through, designing how we want the chatbot to behave, what capabilities we want it to have, how is it going to be secure, how are we going to test the thing, deployment, the web app I talked about, and, how do we continue to maintain and optimize it, keep it fresh going forward. So we do all these things. We did all these things to build it out initially, right? And then we're not done. This is, an ongoing, continuing thing where we circle back and revisit this again and add new capabilities and go through this process for enhancing it and all those other kinds of things, right? Ultimately, this is what it takes to build something like this, that's got some complexity, pretty simple interface, right? We're asking questions, it's giving us back answers. That's, from a user perspective, pretty straightforward, but, behind the scenes to make all that happen, there's quite a bit to it. So this is a pretty simplified view of the core of the process flow, right? The previous slide was about how we built the engine, how we built the application, how we put all the data together behind the scenes, to create a ready, agent or assistant to answer questions, right? Then the runtime thing is what we just did. We ask it a question, it does some stuff behind the scenes, and it's spits out an answer, right? This is more detail about that spitting out the answer process. So it takes the question that we asked, the prompt that the user provided, right, which starts the process, and then the intent classifier, which is a component of the thing, decides what are you asking, right? Is this just a small talk? You want to have a general conversation? Hey, how you doing? Are you having a nice day? You could have non-Illinois state law conversations with this, and it'll try to be a decent chatbot, right? But if it figures out that you're asking it a question related to the state of Illinois and a legal query of some sort, then it goes to work through the next steps in the process here, right? Which is to recognize what you're asking, interpret any citations or other legalese so that it, can look for the right stuff. Then it takes that, builds basically a search filter that goes and retrieves the relevant information and acts and legal text and metadata where appropriate as well. Puts all that together into the LLM generator, right? So, taking the core, answering a prompt and adding all this additional context, the laws that it found, the context and all that, and creating the output, and then refining that output. So that's where we have a bunch of rules and guardrails and things like that, watch out for scenarios where it might hallucinate or it might not give a very useful answer, and say, if you don't know, if you can't find anything relevant, say, I don't know, right? Don't make up some hallucination and pretend, and especially be confident about your made up stuff, which certain chatbot engines and certainly older ones have a tendency to do. But, a lot of work went into trying to tune and hone and leverage the raw, legal stuff and provide useful output, every time as much as we can, right? So all of that, right? And this does leverage, behind the scenes, I mentioned actually, we're leveraging primarily Microsoft and Azure-based technologies to host a lot of this. There are some open source components here as well. You can do this same sort of thing with other platforms and products and tools. But this is what we find, makes most sense for, many types of organizations, whether or not you're already a Microsoft shop, but, especially if you are. But, we also could build similar technologies in other tool sets and platforms if need be. But in this case, we're leveraging, and Microsoft also leverages and licenses the actual ChatGPT models from OpenAI, right? There's a partnership there. Microsoft pays a bunch of money, billions and billions of dollars, to OpenAI to leverage the latest versions of the large language model engines, including ChatGPT 5.2 is the latest one. So, as the models and engines themselves mature and add capabilities, rebuilding and redeploying our app will take advantage of those things as well. So there's a lot of synergy there. Search index, that's a core thing here. How does it retrieve the laws from the database? That's Azure Cognitive Search. That's an AI service that it provides. And then we store the text and the databases that we built from them and other things like that in Azure Blob Storage. The front end is an open source tool called Chainlit Web UI that just makes some of the web processing simpler. Some of the language on the back end that's tying it all together and doing the processing is written in Python and LangChain. That could be, .NET or C# or VB or Python or Java or other things. That's just what we chose for this. And of course, hosting of the web app and the security and everything else we saw is based on Azure App Service and other, Azure tools. So, a little bit of behind the scenes here, right? The gist of this is the way we have this set up right now, this can run and be hosted for as little as about $100 a month based on, fairly small, and not as fast as it could be. So there's a ability to trade off speed and performance for size and cost, right? The beauty of this being in a cloud environment is if we want it to run quicker or if we have more traffic, we can simply go crank up the knobs in the Azure environment to add and scale the processing and compute behind the scenes doing all this stuff. It will cost us more, and we'll get charged for the consumption of those services. But, the cool thing about this is we can, play with the settings and, tune it to either keep it as cheap and simple as possible, which is what we're doing now because we're paying for this out of pocket as a tool and a showcase and a future solution. But in a production scenario, if we were to take this to market and have a bunch of people using it, we'd obviously want a lot more processing power, redundancy, availability, all that kind of stuff going on behind the scenes. So easy to scale this up and crank up the volume knobs on all the back end pieces to make it run really fast, but you pay for it, right? Cool to have that.
Ronald's asking, how confident are you that the results that you see, even the citations attached, have been read and interpreted correctly? And that's the big thing, right? Making sure that your model is tight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've done quite a bit of testing around that. We were playing with, major no-no, Dave. I confessed this earlier when we were getting ready, but we're making changes to this thing as early or as recently as this morning to tweak a couple of things. So, to be honest, I saw at least one of the answers it gave that wasn't quite right, and have to go back. It lost a little bit of the context there. That's about the memory thing, not the engine itself, right? So there's risk, no doubt, right? And testing is the answer. If we were going to make this a commercial product, we'd do quite a bit more heavy-duty testing in a lot more formalized way. But I also think, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of work to prevent errors and hallucinations. And the main way to test would be to ask it hard questions, drill down into the answers, follow the links to the sources, and make sure it's, that whole chain of where it got the information from is accurate and legitimate.
And you never want to trust an AI model entirely. You have to take a look. You have to have some governance and review processes. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%, right? So absolutely, you should never trust at face value any AI generated stuff. Every one of the engines should and does usually have a warning to say, hey, don't trust our output. It might be wrong. We might be making stuff up, right? And that always remains the case and probably will, until such time as human judgment can be replaced with artificial judgment, which is a whole other conversation. Yeah. Right? So we're not there yet. That's also general AI, which is, I was talking about other types of AI, right? General AI is the great big one that's, the future paradox or, whatever, when the Terminator start coming down from Skynet or whatever. But we're still probably 8 to 10 years away from that at this point. So not quite there yet.
Not quite there, but we've all seen the movies.
Exactly.
So we have here, you guys can have this as your takeaways with the stakeholders and the benefits and within your agencies and whatever your deliverable is, right? Because it's dependent on your agency mission and the deliverables that you're responsible for to make sure that those are reliable. But I love your question, Ronald. That's exactly right. You got it. So some of the governance that you have to implement in your agency, you need to have that governance in place to do the review.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have real human beings looking at it, just making sure it's right.
Yep, absolutely. So getting short on time here, so I'll fly through the last couple of things, right? But, outcomes and strategic values, the intent here is that, various types of stakeholders might be interested in this. And there's value and benefit, for them in lots of different ways. We already talked about how the same concept, right? The same virtual assistant or chatbot approach can apply to other bodies of knowledge. That would take extra work, but the possibilities are endless, right? So where do we go from here? Next few things are, we learned quite a bit from this process, right? And we made quite a bit of changes and evolution along the way as we were building this thing, but we're not done yet, right? There's certainly more that we can do. There's additional capabilities, there's additional performance, there's additional, context. We do want to, circle back and start incorporating other jurisdictions, at least one more, so we can compare and contrast between, Illinois and Michigan, or Illinois and Maryland, or Illinois and the federal government kind of thing, right? So more to go on that. And really, the next evolution from here, right? How do we make a chatbot thing or an agent thing, or an assistant thing like this even more powerful or more capable? Well, the answer is to turn it into an agent, or what's called agentic AI. And that basically means taking this same engine and rather than having it give you a response or generate text-based output, give the ability to actually take action or go make changes itself, right? Now, obviously there's some risk there, but that gives you a lot of power to, it can understand goals and it can create tasks and plan, how to answer the question and things like that. So, it could, in this case, proactively inform you when some law change. You could set it up, say, hey, you know what? Keep an eye on what's going on in the state of Illinois government and tell me when they change a law that I care about, right? Or, conduct this multi-stage analysis that might have, a decision tree baked into it that says, identify the risks and obstacles of this or that or the other thing, kind of a thing, right? Lots of cool things you can do, multi-step, more memory, taking action really is what this is all about. And that opens up a whole nother world of possibility. And agentic AI is what I'm talking about here. And that's really kind of the next frontier of AI in general. And where a lot of these tools are evolving towards is, the next step is not just tell you how to do something, but go do it for you and tell you when it's done and how they did it, right? So that's where we're headed. This is another long and really busy slide, mostly meant as a takeaway, but it also highlights potential to, the value of agentic AI and how it can drive greater agility, efficiency, strategic value by enabling reasoning, planning, autonomous action, and things like that, rather than just answers to questions, right? I know, for example, with Copilot in PowerPoint or Word, I can say, where are all the places I use, this phrase, or tell me all the things where this isn't quite right. And I'd love to say, go fix them for me, right? But it can't quite do that yet. It can tell me how to fix it myself, but making it agentic is, again, next level and coming soon, but not quite there yet for a lot of these things. So hopefully this makes some sense to people on the call that can, understand why you might want to go beyond, why you want this, or why you might want to continue beyond from there. All right.
Super. Well, I'll take this back and we'll get you guys out of here. If you'd like to continue the conversation about a specific project and dig down deeper, just let us know what you would like. If you have a project there's a lot of folks that were asking us earlier about specific needs that they have. So please put your information in here so we can get you what you need. And I'll let people know that the recording, as soon as we're done, the recording will be processed. You'll get a recap email. You can schedule one-on-one meetings with DivIHN and their team, as well as procurement options. We'll get to that now. As I mentioned earlier, you're under no obligation to buy from anybody, but if you did want to, you have a GSA contract holder right here that you can work with. You have multiple contracts, right, Matt, that they can use in order to be able to facilitate buying from you if you have a specific need.
Absolutely.
Right, Matt?
Yep.
And we just appreciate you guys joining us today. We want to get you out of here as soon as we can. But if you have anything else, and Ronald's asking, how is Westlaw dealing with this? Great question. You're welcome, Tim. Do you know anything about Westlaw, Jeff? We could probably follow up with Ronald on that if we need to.
Yeah, nope. I'm afraid I don't know much about that. So,
yeah.
Hey, Brian.
That one off the top.
All right, Brian. Thank you. You rock too, especially because you have the Hall of Fame there, Cleveland.
Good catch. Good catch. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Appreciate it, Brian. Thank you very much. Casey, thank you very much. If you have any additional questions, I'm going to pop that into the chat one more time for you. If you need to reach out to Matt, his information will be here for you. And we'll make sure we get you out of here so you can get your next meeting. So there's his information. You can copy that if you need it. And we will look forward to working with you as you need to. Thank you, Jeff and Matt. Great stuff.
Thank you, Dave.
I appreciate you guys. We'll get you out of here. Have a great rest of the day and great weekend. See you. Extended weekend, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.